Welcome back to another segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons, where I'm going to continue taking some of your questions in another segment of Ask Judy. This is from Holly. The Waltons was nostalgic to begin with, and in 2022, we're nostalgic about nostalgia. You might have answered this question previously, but do you prefer acting for live theater or movies, TV? I like both. I tend to like whatever it is I'm doing at the time, which I think is a smart way to deal with it. When I'm doing stage, I love being on stage and I love having the energy of the audience there and everything. When I'm doing film and television, I love the intimacy of the camera and how much more personal it is, and that you can really just focus on what you're doing, and that if you don't get it right, you can do it again. Whereas on stage, well, but also on film, you can end up on the editing room floor. You have no control over your final performance. That is in the director and the editor's hands. So don't like that part of it so much. Another question from Holly, where she said, I wondered if you and your fellow cast family have been affected in any way by interacting with us fans and behind the scenes audience. Absolutely. Early in the series, we didn't have a lot of direct contact with the audience. We filmed the show and it aired months later. And we didn't have a lot of interaction because we weren't doing that many events or appearances. The show was new. It took a while for it to be really popular, all of the first season. But as the show went on, we started to have more contact with people who had viewed the show. We started getting fan mail so we could read what people had to say about it. And then further and further into the series, we met more people who had been really impacted by the show in positive ways, in meaningful ways. Since the show has been off, even more so, I come across people that have the most extraordinary stories they share with us about what the show has meant to them. And when we hear those stories, I know for me, I'm just so touched that this show that I was a part of, that was all make-believe and an imaginary family, and we were having a great time filming it, and we were having a great time together and all of that, and we thought we were telling good stories, but not really recognizing the impact it was having when it went out. And the more connected I've become to that, particularly since I've been doing this YouTube channel and reading all of your beautiful comments and everything, all the really kind things that you've had to say about the cast and the show and what it's meant to you and what it represents and the longevity of it, I'm just more and more honored and privileged to have been a part of creating something with this kind of legacy. So I thank all of you for really being the reason why we're here 50 years later. I mean, we could have done the 9 seasons and all moved on with our lives, and I'd have no reason to be sitting here talking about it or thinking about it other than, wow, I had a wonderful time and I still have my TV family. So you've made it a deeper experience for me, and I think for other members of the cast as well. So thank you. This question is from Judy. How did it work for dressing and changing rooms? Did each person have one, or did the girls share one as well as the boys? Initially, the girls shared a dressing room at times, and the boys shared a dressing room at times, and then Will, Ellen, Michael, Ralph, Richard, they each had their own dressing room. Then pretty soon after that, we started each having our own dressing room, but they were very small, very small. And then that basically continued throughout the series. We had small dressing rooms when we went out onto the back lot and we're shooting out there. We kind of had simple little trailers. And when I stood up, if I had to reach up to change clothes, I would hit the roof of the ceiling of the dressing room. It just kind of had a bench to lay down on or whatever, a padded bench and, a little desk area. And that was kind of it. And fortunately, a window air conditioning unit for the summers. So nothing glamorous for the children, for sure. And then you said, did the adults each have their own? Yes. Were the dressing rooms a place the actors could go into and rest or just chill if need be? Yeah, I mean, we could, but, and sometimes we would. There were times when a number of us would go into one person's dressing room. Like the girls would hang out in one of the girls' dressing rooms and yap. Or sometimes, we'd go into someone else's dressing room. So yeah, we did. We did do that at times. It was tougher when we were on the soundstage because our dressing rooms were on the soundstage, the children. So you couldn't go into your dressing room and really chill unless you were being quiet. So it was nice when we had ones that were outside the soundstage so that we could make noise, because otherwise every time that bell rang and we were filming, you had to be quiet. So yeah, you could go read a book or do something quiet, but you couldn't really, you had to keep stopping if you were chatting. Then, did the costume person help you dress at times, or were you just given an outfit and told to put it on? Yes. Before a scene, the costume person would bring your wardrobe and they'd hang it in your dressing room, and you'd know that that's the next costume you had to put on. You'd take your costume off, hang it up, and then, they'd come and remove that. So there was really only one outfit at a time in there. So you knew which one to put on. You didn't have to decide, which one am I supposed to put on? Perhaps... even Cammie, maybe someone helped her at some point, but probably whoever, her parent or guardian or whoever was there with her would help her change if need be. Then, I imagine the younger children had to have assistants. Yes, I guess you would then dress and then go to hair and makeup, or vice versa. It depended. That changed. Some days they'd say, oh, they're ready for hair and makeup. I usually try to get hair and makeup done before I put my clothes on, but, it changed. A lot of times they go, well, go get dressed while so-and-so's in the chair, and then go get in the chair being the hair or makeup chair. So there was no particular order to it. It was just whatever was going to be the most expedient. Then, curious about it all, you see days on site, the actors have big trailers, dressing rooms, and with names on the doors. Sometimes... our names were usually on the door, or oftentimes your character name was on the door. So that kind of varied, whether it was the actor's name or the character name on the door. And I have worked on a lot of different shows, and sometimes you had a tiny little dressing room that was part of a big long row, like a truck brought what they call the honey wagon. So there'd be like all these little cubicles of dressing rooms, and everybody would just have a little cubicle to change in because... that's what they had out on the location. It's a fair bit of work to move bigger trailers. Never had a big trailer on the Waltons. There have been other shows I've worked on where I had a decent size, a really nice, trailer or half a trailer or something like that. And those were always fun. It's like, can I work here longer? I like my dressing room. Those usually happened on shows where I only had like a day or two. It's like, darn. But it varies a lot. So thanks for asking. This question from Holly. Can you talk a little about your studio school days? What it was like, your teacher, actual building? Did you guys have a lunchroom? Who else attended with you? Okay, so when we were in school, if it was like school term, as opposed to summer where we didn't have to go to school, then we would go to school whenever we weren't actually on set working. So in between takes, in between scenes, all of that. Not in between takes, but in between if they had to change the camera for another setup to somebody else's close-up or something, then we'd go back to school while they did that. Unless they said they were going to be really short, in which case they'd say, don't go, because we're only going to be a few minutes. Our schoolroom was only our cast. It was like a trailer, and it had two parts, two sides to it. So one side was the younger children, the other was the older, because we were in different grades. Initially, we had two teachers. There was a time when the schoolroom was actually on the stage. That was tricky because, again, you had to be quiet when the bell was on and they were filming. So you're trying to do schoolwork, so the teacher and everybody had to be really, really quiet. And then they'd cut the take, and then you could make noise again. And then they moved us into a trailer outside the stage so that we didn't have to worry so much about being quiet. And then once John and I finished school, then I think they only had one teacher for the rest of them, or it might have been after Eric finished, because they needed someone to do high school age and some to do below, like elementary and middle school. Teachers, we had wonderful teachers that could cover multiple topics and multiple grades. So I adored many of our teachers. They were very well educated themselves, and they were wonderful. And then we didn't have a lunchroom in the schoolroom, so we never had lunch in the schoolroom. We always broke for lunch and went someplace else to have lunch. So there was not food in the schoolroom. And then who else attended with you? Just our cast, unless we had other guests working, like when Rachel Longacre, who played Amy, was on, because she was a recurring character. She would have school with us, or sometimes if we had other underage children who were in school, then they might also go to school with us, but nobody that wasn't on our show. So that's the scoop on School on Waltons Mountain. That's what I have for you for this segment of Ask Judy. I'll be back with more of your questions in another segment of Ask Judy and more behind the scenes of the Waltons. Thanks for watching.